Hello, the curious you. I am so happy we're back here again and that the Curious You podcast was able to spark that curiosity and nurture it and was able to bring you back here with me. I am humbled and very, very grateful. I hope that you're doing well and that your week, well, it's already midweek or end of the week, that you've managed to do everything on your to do list, but that you've also found time to enjoy the little things and to spend it with your family and friends. The last weekend, my husband and I went on a little mini retreat when both my mom and dad came to be with the kids that I'm very, very grateful for. And we managed to spend 3 days out in the mountains. And it was the perfect timing because, as you may already know, my very first children's book, The Curious Crew Explores Sleep, was launched this week. So it was very much needed for us to just get away from routine to sort of reflect on everything that has been happening. And we spent the weekend on a beautiful mountain in central Serbia. And that story is a story for some other time, but let's just say that it wasn't a journey out of nowhere. It was something that happened again, really as a surprise to both my husband and I, because it was an invite that we received from a friend that we met last year to join him and a few of his friends for a retreat. And it was a magical, magical retreat. Again, since this episode today is about something different, I will get back on this topic through some other podcast episode because I really believe that this story is a very important one when talking about what we want to do in life. But today, we will talk about you. We will talk about ways in which you can identify what it is that you really want to do in life. What's your meant for? What's your spark? What is that one thing inside of you that is just waiting to get out? So, we will start by talking about all the ways in which you can start thinking about it. And then I will give you a few examples from my own story that I hope will help you on this journey. So let's get this started. So, how to know what you really want to do in life? My God, what a question, right? It's not a straightforward question. It's not an easy one to answer. And it's probably one of the toughest questions humanity has ever had to face. I mean, how do you know what you want to do in life? And of course, there are some people, they were born with knowing those things. Like you see kids that are 8 or 9 and you ask them and they shoot it right away. They say, I want to be a doctor or I want to be an actress or a singer. Or, of course, some kids will say astronaut, like me when I was a child. But that was not really the dream. It was more of something fun that I thought I wanted to experience. But if you ask me now, and God, no, I don't want to be flying in space. So I don't want to be an astronaut anymore. But I think that it is the most important questions that we sometimes as adults forget to ask ourselves. We sort of just slide into all of the things that the society expects us to do. Like we go to school, we go to university, we do a master's program. Some people go on to do a PhD, then we find a job, and we forget to keep asking that question. Because in normal life, if you think about it, normally you only ask yourself that question when you're entering university, right? You finish high school, you know you need to go to university, and you ask yourself, what do I want to do in my life? I remember specifically for me, I was 16, only 16 years old when I was entering university. And I had to ask myself the most difficult question of all time: what I want to do in my life. And I had no idea. I didn't even know what existed. How can I know what I want to do? Like, I knew what I was not good at. I was not good in maths and all of those subjects, but I didn't know what I wanted. But I had to make that decision. And it's like that for most people in this world. They have to make a decision when they're not capable of making that kind of decision. And then life just happens. We get jobs, we start a family or we start a business or we start traveling, whichever phase of life anyone is in. But at one point, we stop asking ourselves that question, or we ask it, but in a shy way, in a way of what could happen if, in a way of if I'd be dreaming about my wildest dream, what would it be? And then we have that somewhere in our head, but we're not bringing it to life. We're not making that a reality. So, one of the first ways I remember when I was on the journey of looking for things that really fire me up from inside and things that I could keep doing for the rest of my life. I remember that first I walked myself through a couple of key words or key values for me. And the number one thing that I found was freedom. I never liked to be chained down by someone else's expectations or to-do list or something that I have to do. It was a very suffocating feeling for me. I would call it that way. I always wanted to wake up and to be able to plan my day however I want. And I know that probably 20 years ago, this was such a big concept for most people. But once I realized that we live in a world where that is literally possible, it is possible to live that kind of freedom and at the same time earn money, that was a game changer for me. You see, only 1 or 2 years ago, I remember when I would have conversations with friends who were mostly in the AI digitalization sector. And those same friends would be very supportive of everything that's happening nowadays with technology. And I remember feeling a bit skeptical about it because let's say I was still stuck in my old ways and I was very hesitant towards accepting the world is changing. I would always say that, oh, I wish I was born, in days when technology didn't exist, when I could just read a book, when people couldn't reach out to me on WhatsApp 24/7, because I was genuinely suffocated by that feeling as well of having to respond immediately when somebody sends me a message or having this pressure in my head one day later that I need to respond to a certain message. And at the same time, I was quite hesitant or skeptical towards what will happen with my job if, AI takes over or jobs of millions of other people. And it wasn't until a very good friend of mine explained a different perspective, a different side of the story, where he said that it could actually be the best thing that could happen to society. And it was the first time I actually heard of that kind of point of view, but he got me because he explained that if AI takes over all the jobs that we don't like doing, then people would have a chance to actually do what they love. And this wasn't something that was abstract or a big, I don't know, dream in the future. It was already happening. Like I started turning around and focusing on how are people actually living? People who are working online, who have their own businesses, what do those kind of people do? How do they live? And not only did I start learning, but I also started surrounding myself with people who were doing the same, with people who recognized that it was never easier to start your own business. And that is the biggest truth that I can tell you from the bottom of my heart. To start a business nowadays, it's 90% quicker and more efficient than it was only 3 years ago. That is the biggest fact. And to me, that was mind blowing that I could start my own business without the hassle of going through things and bureaucracy that people who started 5 years ago had to go through. And plus, there are so many tools, AI tools we can use nowadays to make our lives easier so we can focus on things that we actually love doing. And that was the biggest revelation for me because I realized that technology and AI can bring me that freedom. It can bring me the freedom of me doing whatever I want to be doing. All I needed to do was to find out what I love doing, what I could be doing every day that would fire me up inside. And that leads me to the second part. The second point is energy. That was the biggest question for me. I asked myself, what gives me energy and what drains my energy? To be honest, this was such a simple question for me because I instantly knew that I get energy by talking with people. People give me energy. I always loved people. Everything related to psychology, human behavior, communication, anything related to those fields for me was mind blowing. I would instantly get hyped up. But if we talk about anything ranging from Excel spreadsheets or logic or strategy or numbers, you lost me. You literally lost me. I don't care about any of those things. My husband would laugh right now because we're very much different. If I love people and communicating and psychology, he's completely different. He loves logic, structure, organization, Excel spreadsheets. So, in a way, we really complement each other and help out each other in fields we're not good at. But it's very funny when he tries to explain something to me and then he loses me after 1 minute. I'm like, yeah, I cannot focus on this right now. So, we're completely different in that sense. And I know that what's draining my energy gives him energy and vice versa. So, it's very important to know what gives you that energy. And I'm not saying that in business you will keep doing everything all the time that gives you energy because that's an illusion as well. It's not about not doing what you don't love, but it's about making your main business about something that you truly, truly love. Because everything else that you have to do that's not in accordance with what you truly love doing will be easier because the higher goal is related to what you love to do. So for me right now in my business, all of these procedural things, bureaucratic documents, taxes, whatnot, is easier and more enjoyable because I'm doing it for me. I'm doing it for this higher purpose. And it's not as frustrating and as boring when I used to do it in the past for somebody else. So there's a big, big difference in that. So it's about really thinking what drains you and what gives you energy. What can you see yourself doing for the rest of your life? The next one that was on my list and that I really had to think hard about was contribution because I knew that I didn't want to do something just for the sake of doing it. Like, I wanted to bring value, and I love the feeling of bringing value, not only to my family, but to my friends, to my community. It gives me the best feeling in the world when I help someone. It's really the most special, magical feeling for me in the entire world. And I knew that I wanted to connect my business with that. I knew that I wanted it to focus around providing value. So I was also thinking in, okay, what do I love to do? And does that fit into providing value to this world? Does the world need this or not? That was also a question that I asked myself. Then there were more values that I wanted to look at, like, for example, is this going to provide opportunity for growth? And of course, any type of entrepreneurship. And I always say that entrepreneurship is the quickest path to personal development because it really knocks you out of your shoes. I mean, you're completely naked, out on the street, exposed, and it's the quickest way to sort of dress yourself up again. I would say it like that. Because once you're naked, all you can do is, dress yourself. And entrepreneurship is the same. You start by being naked, and then piece by piece, you're, putting yourself together. So it's a very magical process. And for me, the most important thing was to grow because in traditional jobs and in traditional normal life, I felt like life just kind of stops. It becomes the same. And, since we're kids, we feel like we're growing because we go from school, high school, university. There's this plan for us. And we have this big dream, like we see our future and we know where we're going. And then that future happens. You graduate, you get the job, you work for 2, 3, 4 years, and you ask yourself, is this it? Because you're not growing as fast anymore. And if you are, you get a job promotion, and then what? What happens then? And it's like we need to be setting our own goals from then on. So even if you're in a traditional job, I feel like most of us just stop growing as fast as we grew before because we get comfortable. We're in our comfort zone. We have a pay slip every month. Our bills are covered. We're fine. Like, there's not a lot to be scared of. Luckily, I mean, if we're living in countries that allow for that kind of stability, that we don't have to worry about getting that paycheck. But we don't worry about external circumstances or things that could knock us off our balance because we're fine, right? So for me, it was very important not to be fine in that way, to actually challenge myself every month and to keep growing, because I realized one of the things that give me energy is actually growth, personal transformation. Because once I stop growing as a human being, I don't feel good. I feel like I'm missing out on something. I feel like I'm stuck. And I know that it's in my nature. And to be honest, I strongly believe it's in the nature of most human beings to grow. It's the most natural process. Plants grow. We all grow naturally. So, of course, our brains should grow as well and expand. Most of the people that I know that I'm surrounded with will not tell me that they are genuinely happy with what they're doing. It's very rare to find a person who would tell me, Nina, I love what I'm doing. I'm consumed by it. I know what I'm doing. Like, I have not met anyone like that in my surrounding, except when I paid for somebody who was already there, when I paid for that person's time to listen to how that feels, to listen to somebody who was living that life that I wanted, and to listen to that person talk about the way it makes them feel. That was mind blowing for me. To listen to someone say, I live and I breathe the work I'm doing. I'm contributing to the society. I change people's lives. I wake up and I know my purpose in life. It's such a beautiful feeling to have. And I remember when I was hearing that, I was like, wow, this is what I want. I want to wake up and I want to have a purpose. And I don't want my purpose to be, to fill in a timesheet end of the month. No, I wanted a purpose, a higher purpose, because I knew there was so much in me that I could give to this world. And the only thing preventing me from that was myself, was my fear of exposure, my fear of abandonment, my fear of being judged, but it was all in me. So if I wanted to contribute to the world and to change people's lives, was it really about me and my fear? Or was it about me overcoming that fear and focusing on the people? And the moment I asked myself that question, the answer was right there. I had no excuse to keep justifying my fear, to keep justifying myself, and at the same time, to dream about this big change that I wanted to bring into the world. Like that didn't fit one another. So that was the moment that I realized, okay, this is it. This is it. I want this kind of life. I want to be challenged. I want to go and enter in entrepreneurship. But what was the topic? How do we find, accept the part that we talked about, freedom, energy, growth, but what is it exactly? How do you know what you're meant for? One of the ways that helped me and that I hope could help you as well was thinking about what you loved as a child. And we all know that when we were children, we all had something that we loved. Like, for example, I look at my children right now, and they're already complete human beings. It's crazy, but I already can see what Sophia is good at. I can see what Victor is good at. And I'm trying so hard to write these things down, to remember them as these little tiny human beings with a big character, because I want to tell them. If they forget it in the future, I want to tell them who they were and who they are at the core, because that is so important. We sort of lose ourselves. We lose the child in ourselves as we grow up. We are overtaken by logic, by rationalization of things, but we're forgetting to reach out to the inner child and to talk to the little Anna or the little Maria or the little Sophia. Like, we need to talk to our inner children. And that is what I have been doing for the past few years. I took some time to go through my family albums, to talk to my mom, to talk to my dad, to really think about who I was as a child. And I remember there was this funny story when I lived in India. I was spending an afternoon at my best friend's house. We were playing outside in the garden, and at one point, we heard a baby cry. And we looked at each other, and we sort of climbed up to a table to be able to peek through the garden to see what was going on the other side. And life in India being life in India, you have all of these contrasts. Right outside her garden, there was a camp where people who had no homes lived. And we didn't see anybody in that camp except a small crying baby. There she was, all alone and abandoned. And Mia and I, we hopped through the garden, we went to the camp, and we got the baby. We took the baby back home with us. We gave her a bath, we dressed her up, we put some lotion on her, we were playing with her. I mean, it was like the most natural thing in the world. And at one point, Mia's mom came back home and she freaked out. She absolutely freaked out. And of course, I mean, I understand her. I cannot imagine entering my own home and seeing another baby inside. And she told us that we needed to return the baby. And of course, Mia and I were very, very sad because we enjoyed spending time with that baby. But we knew that we had to return her. The baby had a mom, the baby had a dad, and we had to find a way back to the parents. So we went looking for the mother and the father with Mia's parents, and finally we did find them. They went out to get some water from a local a shop, which was not nearby. So they had to leave the baby because it was very, very hot. They didn't want to take her with them. Anyway, we returned that baby, but it was just one of the stories that was stuck in my head because I always loved babies. I always loved kids. Even when I was a student, I would be babysitting. I just knew I wanted to earn money. I wouldn't go to a bar to be a bartender. No, I'm going to babysit. And I would be teaching kids English language. I would be taking them to parks, on trips, and I would really enjoy spending time with them. And the truth is, it wasn't so much about taking care of kids, it was more about finding out how their brain works because I love children's brains. And I say it a lot of the time is that I find kids more interesting sometimes than adults because they're curious, they ask questions, they're fresh. They're full of energy and they have this to do attitude that they can do anything. Life is theirs. They own it and they're proud, happy, they're angry, they're sad. They have all of these emotions. They feel it, they say it, it's out, and they go for what they want. And it's such a refreshing energy in comparison, of course, to us adults who somehow down the road we lose this. And as I was thinking about the little Nina, I realized how much I love kids. But I also realized how much I love humans in general. And it was crystal clear to me that first I wanted to do something for kids, for the education of kids, because I truly believe that nowadays education is not where it needs to be. Kids are not learning the way they should be learning because let's be real, it is boring. It is boring to sit for 8 hours and to listen to theory. And that was one of the things that I knew that I wanted to change. I wanted to find a way that kids can learn, ask questions, nurture curiosity, but that is fun because I knew how I felt when I had to sit for 8 hours and listen to adults talk. I mean, it was agony. For me, it was real agony. So I knew that it was one of the things that I wanted to change. And the second part is again communication with other human beings. And more specifically, since I'm a mom in this very peculiar situation of entering into the entrepreneurship world and trying to make it out of my comfort zone, I knew that I wanted to talk to other women and to help them change their lives, leave their comfort zone, and go after their wildest dreams. So when I put two and two together, I realized that was it. That was what I wanted to do, all while using the wonderful perks of living in 2025 and having access to all these beautiful tools that can help me launch a business without the effort of actually going through all of these boring administrative processes. So that's it. That was the path. I know it's very hard to sum it up in a 30-minute podcast, but I hope that the path that I took and the questions that I asked myself would help you ask yourself the same questions because I know that you are special. I know that when you were a child, you had something inside of you that nobody else had. You had thoughts inside your little head that you were asking yourself that nobody else was asking themselves. And I know that somewhere along the way, you stopped asking those questions because you believed that logic and everything else you thought you should be doing was stronger than that. So I am inviting you to go back to your little self and to have a real conversation with your little self. Ask your little self, what would that little version of you be proud of if he or she saw where you are today? And then the second question you can ask yourself is, when you're 80 or 90 years old, what would the future self be proud of when looking back at your life? And I really think that making our little self and our future self proud and happy is the ultimate goal. So, I will leave you with these two beautiful, important questions for today. I hope this episode helps you, and let's keep on being curious together. Until next week. Bye. Kisses.